Hey, what is up? All right, back at it. I did realize last time with this new program I'm using, there's a little bit of lag time with the comments, but feel free to go ahead, plug in any questions that you have, and I will definitely get to those a little bit later. So one of the cool deals that's happened here in the last month was the Supreme buyout for $2 billion, 2.1 billion, which is pretty unreal considering, it started out as just a skater brand. And, one of the things that I was watching an interview where so a couple of folks that were big influencers in New York had a big following and didn't get paid for promoting them, but were big, heavy promoters. And they were promoters because it was this very kind of hidden brand. It wasn't this big mass market kind of deal. And it's one of the unique things about Supreme. And obviously, at this point, they're like, wow, like we should have taken equity in exchange for that. So I want to talk about 2 points around that. Number one of the impressive things that Supreme pulled off is maintaining their kind of underground movement and having those folks' loyalty while it was really, getting into the hundreds of millions and then obviously billions of dollars, which is a difficult thing to do. But the other part of this is trying to get equity. Like a lot of times, I think when we're doing things for small businesses or small brands, we don't think about negotiating equity. And one of the greatest stories of somebody who still lucked into it because he was offered it was is David Chow, who he was a graffiti artist. He, came in contact with Mark Zuckerberg when they were starting Facebook. Facebook didn't have the money to have like interior designers and all that stuff. So like, let's make this cool. Let's find a graffiti artist to do it. And they offered him the option: do you want equity or do you want to take cash? And he very, very smartly decided to take equity. And so, he was kind of, he was a graffiti artist, just doing his thing, whatever, and ended up worth, I think it was at least 100 million, maybe been closer to a couple 100 million for one piece of graffiti art that he did years ago. So you think about all of those influencers and folks that just really push, a lot of them rappers, people in hip hop who really pushed Supreme as this cool brand. And if they just said, "Hey, let me have a tiny piece," at that point, the what David ended up getting from Zuckerberg was really small. Like it wasn't this big company, and he got a small piece of this small business. But you never know when that business is going to turn into something huge, and so it takes a little bit of foresight. But I think if you have the chance to play the lottery a lot of times, it can pay off in just taking those little small chunks in the businesses. And I see it in my portfolio. It's almost it's kind of crazy that it happens almost succinctly. I'll have a deal where we're having issues, we're having just all kinds of things that break, or trying to figure out a new marketing campaign and or changing over agencies. There's just all these things that pop up. But then at the same time, there'll be another deal where it's like, oh man, we just got this major client. It's a Fortune 500 company. They want to do this, and that with us. And so the goal with private equity is to have a portfolio that's big enough that happens. Because if you're in business, there's always going to be ebbs and flows. And the tough thing for a lot of business owners right now is they're in the ebb kind of side of the cycle. And it becomes very tough if all your eggs are in that single business. You only have that to depend on. It's paying your bills, and then that just goes away. It's one of the reasons that entrepreneurs fail at such a high rate, because they literally are putting all their money in one basket, all their time in one basket, and it becomes difficult to diversify. When you've got that diversified, larger basket of private equity deals, you end up in a situation where it's just like what I said. You're going to have those things that don't go well. You're going to have those things that are going well, and then it flips a few months later, and the deal that wasn't doing as well is doing better now. And so it takes a large portfolio to do that, and it takes always growing that portfolio. So you're using some of the cash flow that's coming in to continuously grow. And I think that becomes an interesting opportunity for a lot of influencers. And so if you're an influencer that's watching this channel, that's something that I think is actually easy to negotiate. We talk about it from the perspective of consulting for equity. And, I think there's a lot of opportunity there with small businesses because they're willing to give up their equity in a lot of cases more easily than the cash, especially if you're not coming in talking about 51%. If they know, hey, we have control, we're going to give you 0.5% of the company, but imagine owning 0.5% of Supreme. So I think there's a big opportunity with influencers and connecting those influencers with businesses that are willing to give up equity if you're a deal maker. So you don't even have to be the influencer. You could just connect influencers and say, hey, you should take some equity. I'm going to take a little bit of piece of equity. I'll go and do the deal making and negotiate and all of that. All right, let's get into some questions. We got question here from Castellon. Thanks for popping in. If you don't mind, hit the like buttons and let's see, I'm gonna pull this over. Hit the like button. If you have a question, pop that in here. This one I really like. I got another one from LinkedIn, it looks like. So when it comes to my path, I've talked about it a few times on the channel, but it wasn't a plan. I was very happy buying and selling businesses and just doing deals. And actually, when I was first approached about even talking about a private equity fund, I felt like, man, all that's going to do is slow me down from being able to do deals. And it wasn't until I got into the fund that I realized, okay, like maybe there's something here. I've talked about some of the tax benefits. I've talked about the ability to leverage the equity of the fund to get access to cash for more deals or get access to actual, almost like an equity for the equity exchange. There's just a lot of cool things that you can do that allows you to do deals better and make more money from those deals. And that was kind of on the back end. But the bottom line becomes, I think it's smart to follow what billionaires are doing because they've spent the time and a ton of money to have experts, have accountants, have a whole team of people that are researching and figuring out the structure. And so when Steve Schwarzman or when the guys at KKR, when they continue to do fund after fund, I think that's a big signal. That's a very big signal that, hey, this is something to at least pay attention to. And it goes back to what I talk about even in the financier strategy. A lot of people feel like, oh, lending, that's got to be a very bad business. And, you land in every major city on the planet Earth, and the biggest building is always a bank that's in the business of lending. And so it's not to say that you want to go into that business, but if you land in every city, it's at least a business to understand. You at least want to understand it because there are probably some tactics, there are probably some things there that that you can learn from and apply to any business. So that's what I want to do. I want to look at, okay, what are the strategies that the ultra, everybody talks about the 1% and all that, but what are the strategies that they're using? And number two, how are they thinking about money? How are they thinking about wealth building? And because, if you grew up in a home like I did, and your parents, I had really amazing parents, but they were poor. And so they were thinking differently. And they grew up. I mean, they were doing way better than how they grew up. So they made some amazing, amazing strides, but they aren't going to be able to pass down the mentality of somebody who's worth $100 million, worth $1 billion. And we the cool thing is now we live in a time where accessing how those people think and what those people are doing is easier than ever before. And so it's important to take advantage of that. It's important to understand. One of the funnest things to me is like broke people who want to make money, but they think they know everything. It's like, dude, like maybe you don't know everything. You're broke. Like maybe you should try learning and listening. But it's usually the brokest person in the room that has the most to say, the most strong opinions about the way the world should work, and blah blah blah. So that was a little bit of what started the path. But then as I got in, it kind of opened my eyes to, of course, like it was one of those things where I was the broke person thinking like a broke person. I was the person who's like, nah, like I can just go and flip these deals and this is fine. And I don't want to waste my time with all the legal stuff and the headaches and all of that. And I go through that even as we're taking a company public. It's the same thing where it's like exercising these muscles. We're going through something right now where we got to figure out how to disclose something and if we can do this deal or not, and you've got to make sure everybody's happy and the SEC is happy and attorneys are happy and blah blah blah. It's like, oh my goodness, this is a pain, but it's only a pain in the sense that you're used to benching 150 pounds and now you're trying to do 175 10 times. And now it's like, okay, this is a pain. And so it's a growing pain to knowing there's some downsides. It is additional work, but there's a reason that it's done. And the more you get into it, the more you realize, like, oh wow, like it was 100% that way for me. It's like, man, number one, if I had learned this earlier on, if I had started, I'd already had multiple deals. I could have started my first fund 15 years ago when I was 25. And then I would have had that much more experience and understanding, because it's a different game. It's not just buying and selling businesses. It's a much, much different way of thinking about deals, what types of deals you do, how you exit the deals, all that stuff changes. And especially in the micro private equity space, a lot of this is new. And so I'm figuring all of that out on the fly, like on the job. I'm literally kind of learning everything, and that becomes a lot of work, just trying to trial and error. But I'm glad that I did when I did. I wish I would have started my first fund when I was 25, but thank goodness that I didn't wait until I was 50. So, starting that, I guess my first one would have been 34, 35, something like that. That was a really great decision because it allowed me to start to get that experience. Taking a company public, it's like stretching that muscle, so that you're going through that process. And just honestly looking at what the super wealthy do. Speaking of taking companies public, Airbnb is going public today, but it's just very few billionaires that haven't sold a major company, and you're only doing that by selling shares of that company, i.e., Airbnb, Facebook, all these folks, or doing a deal, a private equity type deal, i.e. Instagram, WhatsApp, and those kind of things to another company, or doing a deal with a private equity fund. I mean, they're like, it's very few paths. I think it's funny that a lot of people are trying to build wealth, and they're focusing their skill set around things where you can't point at a single billionaire. Like I can't point at a billionaire who is really great at building an audience on Instagram. And it's okay not to want to be a billionaire, but if you're going to do something, why not be in the game that they're playing? So my goal isn't to be a billionaire, but I know, oh wow, if there's billions flying around in this space, for me to get, tens of millions, it's going to be a lot easier. But if you're playing in a game where the top, honcho is making 20 million, now you gotta be, the Michael Jordan of that game. And like I will quickly admit, I'm not Michael Jordan, man. I watched I watched the series, The Last Dance, and yeah, that dude is an animal. He's an animal. Gracias. So that's that's kind of where we end up is if we're in a game and we feel like that game is going to be something that is the max, the top person is only generating 20 million or 50 million. We have to really be at the top of our game to make 1 million. So something to think about. All right, let's get into some of these. That was a really great question to start off. Thank you so much. Let's see, who else we got here? Take that one off. All right, we got Joseph Gay. What's up? Thanks for jumping on, homie. Let's see what he asks. What type of services would one offer if they wanted to consult for equity? I'm a freelance web developer that also knows some marketing. Is that something I can leverage? 100%. I mean, you think about the idea that I just gave. Like, if you're in marketing, if you can bring somebody business, then you are valuable enough to generate or to get equity, because you're literally going to make them money. Now, the way you negotiate that is important, because you don't want to go in and just ask for equity up front and not offer anything. So for me, what I would do is basically kind of a watermark or milestone type deal structure, where you say, I'm going to complete these tasks for you, or I'm going to deliver this amount of income for you. And once I do, then I get this amount of equity. So if you're just starting, which it sounds like it would be your first consulting for equity deal, I would structure a deal like that. And it's still a win-win. You're just, no matter whether you get that deal to work or not, going in, learning that business, seeing how you can add value to that business becomes a muscle. I've owned, I've invested in so many different types of businesses at this point that it's very rare for me to see a business and not see all of the little tweaks that can be made to improve that business. And it becomes a little bit frustrating too in my current portfolio. I was on the call on a portfolio deal today, and I'm like, listen, we got to do this. We need to be doing this. And it's like, hey, so we got like 3 people working on this. So there's no way that we can do all of these things. It's like, yeah, I know. So that ability is valuable in and of itself. And like people pay thousands of dollars to be able to do that. So that would be the way I would structure it, the way I would go in. And like I said, understanding that regardless of what happens with the with the deal, it's valuable knowledge. Let me know if that makes sense to you, Joseph. Where are you guys located? I'm curious. Hello, Keeno. Thanks for popping on. Jens. Let's see. We're gonna take this one off. Awesome. Jens asked, how did you do your first deal? And what was your background before private equity? Again, hold on one sec. Again, so my very first deal was way in advance of anything to do with private equity. I bought an internet business. It was a online stock market simulator when I was in college. The quick version is I worked in the summers, had $3,000 saved up. The owners of the business were actually younger guys, but the I was a client and user of the business. I wanted to become an intern, and that when I reached out, they were trying to sell the business, and I ended up doing basically a micro leverage buyout, and used some credit cards, had a buddy invest, and between those and the seller financing, was able to buy that very first business. So that was the first deal, and then after that, I just started to buy businesses, and that business failed, which is an important part of the story. So I went through depression, got a job for 6 months, and thought my entrepreneurial career was over. And while I was at I was doing mortgages at a bank, and I realized, like, man, because I bought that first business not knowing anything about buying businesses. It was just luck. And so I didn't think that could be an industry. I definitely didn't think that this could be a career. I think now with the internet and there's so much information, like you can look and see, oh, wow, there are other people doing things. But at that point, I didn't know anybody that were buying and selling businesses. Like the path was, if you want to be wealthy coming from a poor family, you're going to become a doctor, you're going to become a lawyer, you're gonna become an engineer. That was the path. And at that point, I dropped out of school, but then the business I dropped out for went out of business, and here I was stuck like Chuck. So I'm sitting there, I'm doing mortgages, dealing with corporate America and all of that, and it just clicked one day. Like, I wonder if there are mortgage companies that I could buy. And I was definitely motivated because I was basically going to get fired. So I was definitely motivated to figure out something else. And so I went from actually resigning, almost been fired, resigning, and deciding I went from basically, almost been fired, to then being CEO of a mortgage company that I had to buy with no money down because the other business had gone out of business. And, I had a little bit of cash, but I still was able to negotiate a really sweet deal on that mortgage company. And after that, buying and selling tennis salons, retail companies, and back into internet deals. And then, unfortunately, like I said, I wish I would have started my first fund earlier, but it wasn't until after all of that, nearly a decade and a half of doing deals, that I started my first fund. And I wish I would have done that definitely a lot earlier on. What up? What up? All right, I'm gonna try to say your name, man. I feel like it's Gaetano Gargiulo. Let me know if I am way off on that. All right. So he says, hi, Ace. I'm thinking of starting a fund to acquire software companies, adjust, add value, and list them. I'm from Europe. Love Europe, man. I miss traveling. It makes me so sad every time I think about it. Do you have any experience running a fund in Europe? No, I don't. So I've never had a fund that was based in Europe. I think you do want to pay attention to the local laws, what are the tax ramifications. And I talked to a lot of people. I was just talking to a guy, shout out, he may pop on in Dubai. I guess no, it's like maybe late there in Dubai. Talked to somebody else in Ireland. You can do it anywhere. It's not a matter of that, but you do want to make sure that whatever kind of jurisdiction you put it under, because even within the U.S., it's not like the U.S. is just one way to operate a fund. Where you create the entities is important on a state by state basis. where you create the LP entity. You know, if you got the GP, you've got the LP, like all that stuff is important, and you know, you just want to be in tune. So on a country level, understand it. You know, depending on how the where the country is, but you know, where I am right now, it's not states, it's departments. You know, so on that secondary level, being in tune with what are the tax ramifications, what are the regulations for me reaching out to investors and how I raise the money, who I can raise the money from. All of that is important, and that's a part of what we walk folks through in the private equity fund incubator, which is cool. We have the first invitation coming up. We haven't had an invitation in a long time for new members into the private equity fund incubator. Oh, wow. We got quite a few questions that have come here. Valentina, ¿puede quitar eso? Es mucho ruido, una cosa allá. Sí, gracias. Let's see, what questions we got in this? This is the best question so far. And it's not a question, it's a statement. Clay Pro says, I'm broke and I know everything. That should be like definitely on the t-shirt or something. I'm broke and I know everything. Keeno, what up? What up? All right, let's see. How many of these we got on here? All right, let's go to this one. Mr. Chapman, when looking to obtain funding, are SBA government loans the way to go to obtain funding? Can one obtain funding if the credit score of the business entity is good? All right, so let's start with SBA. I've done 2 SBAs. I've been a partner in another business that got an SBA. And so I am pro SBA at certain times. I was negative SBA maybe 3 years ago as the market hit the top. I mean, we got to a point where the market was just completely nuts, and the small business arena multiples were going up, deal quality was going down. And during a time like that, I'm not a big fan because you are taking on a lot of risk in order to take that loan on, because there aren't as many deals in the market. If you haven't found a really great deal, then that's great. But the interesting thing is, if you do find a really great deal, a lot of times you don't need an SBA loan because they're a motivated seller. You're going to get a really great seller finance deal structure or earnout. And so you don't need SBA. If you're getting into a deal and there's an opportunity to invest in the business and get a good ROI on your investment, and that means outside of the sales price. You know, we're looking at a deal on a gun shop, and there were just some things. Number one, the property was worth more than what the business was. There were some improvement things that could be done that would instantly increase the clientele, basically making the gun range having the ability to use larger guns or whatever. I'm not a big gun guy, but I'll buy a gun business because in the US, y'all are going crazy with the guns right now. So it's a really good business to be in. But I'm a fan. I'm a fan of SBA when it's the right deal structure. So if you end up in a situation and you can buy a business, invest in that business, and grow the income, that is awesome. But outside of that, I wouldn't do it because, again, if the seller's really motivated, they're gonna give you the financing and all that. Let me know if that makes sense. All right, we got Brian Johnson. He says, can you talk about the lifestyle component? How much can you take? Hola, puede esperar ya por un momento. Oh, Pregunta ella. Pregunta, diga ella cuánto es. ¿Dónde es mi teléfono? Ah, sí, sí. Bueno, gracias. No, es acá. All right, let's talk about the lifestyle component. How much does it take to live comfortably out of the country? So it depends what country. So I was just talking about Dubai. If you're going to Dubai, actually Dubai has it's probably going to have a lot of opportunities right now. And that is exciting. But I think, if you're talking about a country that's like South America or whatever, um, if you're talking about a country that's in South America, a country that's in Southeast Asia, certain part like Eastern Europe, you can get a great value for your dollar. I like a combination. Like I want to be in a cool place. I want to be able to um, eat at great restaurants and, just have that kind of experience for the most part. Every once in a while, I like being at the beach and, not eating at really nice restaurants and that kind of thing, but it's just a different kind of lifestyle, a little more laid back lifestyle. So it depends where you want to be. I would be curious kind of what locations you're thinking about, but it doesn't take much, man. Like it literally doesn't take much. If you're looking at kind of just bare bones, living comfortably, I mean, I would say probably 80%. Is it maybe 70? I would say 70% minimum, more probably 75, 80% of the world. You are living very comfortably for two grand a month or less. And like, really comfortably. And so that's something to think about. But and then just one of the things that I love right now, like I don't have necessarily any a home that I own or anything like that. So it allows me to be mobile. So if an area is something that I find a better deal or it has more of what I'm looking for, I can easily move around, and so I'm willing to pay that premium to have mobility because for me I value mobility a little bit more than owning a house. And then just the math, you should do the math on owning a home that you live in. Real estate can be great, but owning your own home that you live in, the math does not work out that great. So there are lifestyle choices that you can make that drive the cost down. But I would say again, 2 grand a month, you're living really pretty well. And then to really ball out, I mean, you're probably at 5 grand in 70% of the world. You can live like you're a baller, spending 15 grand a month in New York. And I went to school in New York, so a lot of my buddies are in New York, and what they're paying, man, is absolutely outrageous. So let's see. I'm gonna do one more. Solo un momento más y vamos a comer. Let's see. We got Joseph is from Richmond. Beautiful, beautiful city, town. I love it there. North Carolina representing. Let's see. Paris, France. Paris is on my list. I gotta get to Paris. Let's pick one last one. Panama or Colombia. Okay, very cool. Yeah, so you're gonna do well in either of those at the amounts that I was talking about, Brian. Let's go with this. Nandi, Ganda. All right, Nandi asks, how many people do you recommend should be on your team? That's a great question. When you're starting your first PE fund, what qualifications should this team have? So it depends what kind of deals you're doing. If you're buying internet businesses, then obviously expertise in those businesses would be where you want to find restaurants, expertise in that. So that's the first place I would start. Before I even get to the fun team, I would get to the operations and execution team, and I would have those folks in place before. It was one of the mistakes I made on one of my first funds. Was like, okay, we're gonna go out, we're gonna do these deals, but the team wasn't deep enough to two things. We ended up raising more than close to triple the amount that was originally planned, and we just did not have the depth on the bench to be able to execute, and because of that, we ended up giving back half of the money. So if you can't execute, you're gonna have to get that money back. Or try to force deals that really shouldn't be happening. So that's one, that's where you want to start. The second part is your internal fund team. So when you're looking at your fund team, you've got basically three components. Got the finance component, the accounting and all of that. Then you've got the operations, kind of overseeing the fund's operations. And then, you've got kind of support staff that will help as well. And 2 out of 3 of those could be the same person. I probably would not have all three by the same person, but you can run a really, really large fund with a staff of 3 to 4 people. You look at even Warren Buffett, which is essentially a fund, but billions and billions and billions of dollars, and they've got 40 folks. So it's a really efficient business. That's one of the attractions to it, is you don't have to have a bunch of overhead. There isn't a lot of cost, and you can scale, whether it's $1 million or $100 million, $1 billion. Like you could really run $1 billion fund with a pretty small team. All right, I may do one more. Bryce, who just got hired at an asset management fund. Congratulations, homie. That is awesome. That's a great place to get your feet wet and start to learn some of this stuff. We got Montrell, who just bought a small e-commerce store. That's what I'm talking about. I love it. Taking some action. And this is the very last one. What is the difference between private equity and mergers and acquisitions? It's really having a fund. So for most private equity deals, they're buying it with a fund. Mergers and acquisitions, what I was doing pre-fund, it's just going out, finding deals, buying those businesses would be kind of the acquisition side of that. When I had a business that was acquiring another business, that would be the merger side of that. All right. Thank y'all so much for jumping on. Hit the like button as you're popping out of here. And thanks so much for the really, really great questions today.